All right, so we got Alan Corey on. Alan is awesome. We met in person back in Orlando at FinCon. He's done a lot of amazing things. He's a top realtor in Atlanta. He's got a couple different podcasts, Stacking Deeds and Real Estate Maximalist. He's got his house fire method, how he teaches people to invest in real estate. And he's got that in the book form, and he teaches people through coaching as well. And he's been in syndications, he's been investing since 2002. So the dude's done so much stuff, been around the game for a long time. So I am honored to have him on. Alan, thanks for being here, man.
Dude, this is awesome. Who knew that like running into each other at a conference would lead to this? But you impressed me from the get go. So thanks for including me in your orbit with your new podcast here.
For sure. I'm honored to have you. I remember when we were talking in Orlando, I was like, man, this guy has just done so much. What happens in the social media space is sometimes followers get clout, right? You see people with followers, and let me tell you something. Followers doesn't equate to actual real life work. Now, there's people who have some followers on social media who do good, but I have met some of the most brightest real estate minds who got into the social media space a little bit later, who will have big followings just because they're killers, but they're the people you want to learn from. And so Alan's growing his social. Everybody will know his name within the next year. I promise you that much. If you don't know him yet, you're in for a treat, because he's one of those guys who knows real estate and can break it down in layman's terms and make it easy for people to understand. So again, super excited for you to be on here, Alan. So tell us a little bit about you, who you are. We'll get into the real estate stuff, but who is Alan Corey? Who is the audience listening to?
Yeah, I mean, I got into real estate, so you said followers, and followers don't really pay the bills, but I got into real estate because I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. So as soon as I graduated college, I moved to New York City to do stand-up. And you can't pay your bills with laughs. I found out, and landlord doesn't accept jokes each month for payment, but especially terrible jokes like that. So that's sort of how my comedy career was going. But I was working at a tech support job, 9 to 5. Then I was at the comedy club till 3 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, man, this is not sustainable. My lack of sleep. And I was like, if only I could get rid of my day job, can I focus on comedy? And I just went to, the library, checked out every book I could. This was, I'm 45 now. So this is pre-social media, pre-YouTube. The library was my source of free education. And, real estate just connected with me. And I was like, man, if I could just buy one property a year for the next 5 years, I can leave my day job and focus on being a comedy writer was really what I wanted to be. But to be a comedy writer, you have to do stand up. But so I started doing that. And then I realized, wow, I mean, real estate pays much better than comedy. I enjoyed it. I was better at it. And then I was like, I want to keep my day job and get as many properties as I can so I can keep getting mortgages and mortgages. And it turned into sort of a fun thing where my third property I ever did, my first flip, in Brooklyn, New York. And this is when no one wanted to live in Brooklyn. I was investing in Brooklyn because it was cheap at the time. But the person who bought my first flip was Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank. And
wow,
that when that happened, I was like, I quit because I was like, I'm doing something right. She doesn't even know that, but she validated that. Okay, if Barbara Corcoran's buying the properties that I sourced out and got off market, negotiated and flipped, and then she's buying it, I'm like, okay, this is the confidence boost that, I was 25 at the time, and I was like, okay, I'm going all in on this.
Wow, what a story. That's pretty cool. Because I would imagine she was already a pretty darn big name in New York at that time.
Yeah, she had just sold Corcoran Group for, I want to say, $40 million, something like that. And so she was still trying to, get involved in real estate. And so she was putting some of that money back into rental properties. This was a mixed use building, a storefront on the ground floor, and two apartments up top. And it made the front page of the New York Times. And I was like, yeah, all right, let's, let me, I became known as the, New York real estate whiz kid, and led to a couple book deals. And I was like, all right, this is, I'm doing nothing but real estate. And, that was 20 years ago and I haven't looked back.
Wow, that is awesome. So I want to dive into the details of that first deal, but before, what sparked your interest about real estate? And we all have our story about why we wanted to get in. What was it for you?
I felt in control because I was reading all the wealth building books, and it was like, stocks, IRA, mutual funds, and I was doing all that, but I felt like I was gambling, like long term gambling, because it was like I didn't have control at my day job. I was making $50,000 a year. I lived in the projects, Spanish Harlem projects at the time, and I was like, I have no control of my money. In stocks, because I can't go to the CEO and say, fire your customer support person, or I don't like your product packaging. Like I'm betting on some person I don't even know. I'm betting on numbers in a newspaper, and wishing and praying the economy does something great in 30 years, right? And historically, it'll work out. But real estate, I felt like I could control. I couldn't control my income at the time, but I could maybe control my outcome with real estate through sourcing the deal. What renovations am I doing? What am I going to rent it for? What's going to be in the lease? I just sort of felt like I had the power to do something. And I saved up my first $10,000, and I was at the projects, and I was like, I can either put this $10,000 in stocks and just wait for 30 years when I'm living in the projects, or I can house hack my first property with 10% down. Found a $100,000 condo on Myrtle Avenue, which at the time everyone called Murder Avenue. And I was like, well, if this doesn't work out, I'll be back in the projects. If it does work out, like there's such an asymmetric upside that I could go big. And I moved there, and I had a buzz cut at the time, and definitely I was out of place, growing up in Atlanta, Southern boy, and everyone was stopping me on the streets and be like, "Hey man, what are you doing here, man? Are you a cop?" And I would be like, what's the right answer? Like, do you want me to be a cop? Do you not want me to be a cop? I'm so naive. I don't know, like, what where do you want me to be? Like, and so,
that is funny.
Definitely fish out of water. And, but I'll tell you, I moved there cause that's all I could afford. But it was better than the projects. And then, next thing you know, all the 99-cent stores and the, bodegas turned into Chipotle's and Starbucks. And then I sold one of my duplexes in Brooklyn to Christina Ricci, who's like an actress who plays Wednesday on Addams Family. And I was like, oh man, celebrities are moving to Brooklyn. Barbara Corcoran bought my Brooklyn property. Just everyone's like, hey, Alan, you got lucky. I was like, yeah, I got lucky eating ramen noodles for 5 years and buying properties no one else wanted to, and friends wouldn't visit me. And, but I got lucky, I guess. But so it worked.
Isn't that funny? How the people who are sitting on the sidelines, not doing anything, not building wealth, and you got a guy like yourself who are taking these chances. You don't know what's going to happen, and you have good fortune come your way, and it's called luck. No, if you want to call it luck, fine. But I say you took action.
Thanks. And it's not that I wasn't, I bought each property that for cash flow. Like it was like a get rich slow scheme. Scheme's not the right word, but plan. And it just so happened I got rich quickly. But that was not the expectation. It made me look smart, but I bought it for the fundamentals that you teach every day, JD.
Wow. And it's funny I've probably said this on every podcast episode so far, but I'm a big baseball guy and I relate everything back to sports. If you hit enough singles, if you go for those singles, then eventually you're going to run into some home runs. And you were just trying to hit singles. You weren't trying to, like you said, get rich quick. You were just building a strong, steady portfolio that you knew over time was going to change your life. And then because of that, boom, they actually ended up turning into home runs 5 years down the road, totally altered the direction of your life. And I'd say you probably made a pretty good decision, don't you?
Yeah. And during that time, there was a three-year rain delay of the great financial crisis. So keeping with the baseball, scheme, but but everyone's like, did you go broke? Was that a bad situation? And I was like, No, like it was actually great for me because people couldn't buy a house, so they needed to rent. And sure, like I had a property that I bought for $450,000. That was a duplex. It went up to $1.3 million of equity before the crash. I wasn't selling it; I was living in it. I was house hacking in it, and then it went back down to like $600,000, and then it went back down to 450, and then it went back up to $1 million, and then I ended up selling it for $2 million, and it was like, but that wasn't even on my radar as a 20 something. All I cared about was what's my fixed rate mortgage and what's my rental income. Oh, it covers my entire mortgage plus $2,000 on top of that, and this is fine. And every time I put something up for rent, I had 20 people within 24 hours apply because no one was buying homes at the time. It created a stronger rental pool. So if you buy long and hold, buy and hold rentals, you can wait out any market because you're cash flowing in the meantime. So it just seems so risk free, and that was just a great lesson actually to learn early in my 20s. To just patience is the key to success. Yeah, real estate's not get rich quick; it's get rich eventually. I mean that's what it is.
That's great. That's fantastic advice. Fantastic advice. So walk us through that first property that you ended up selling to Barbara Corcoran. What made you buy that one? How'd you underwrite it? How'd you find it? All the good stuff.
Yeah. So this was, my plan was to buy one property a year for 5 straight years. So the first thing was a 1-bedroom condo that I turned into a 2-bedroom condo. The second thing was a duplex that I have house hacked. Both of those bought with FHA loans. First one I had $10,000. Second one I borrowed money from friends, five friends for $5,000 a pop, and got $25,000 down to buy the next duplex. And then I was out of money. And like every good real estate investor, you put all your money in deals, but you still find deals. You still want to move. So that house hack, actually, my next door neighbor was a contractor, and just being someone I could talk real estate to, because my roommates were all comedians, so everything's a joke, house of clowns. But talking business, my neighbor every time I saw him on the street was great, and so he did what I call. So he's like a contractor. So he would live in a place for 2 years, fix it up, and then he'd move and buy another fixer upper and avoid the capital gains taxes that way. And so I call that floater homing. Like his home would float for every 2 years, floater homing. But
Yep.
he was like, he had finished renovating his house. He had like a year to wait until he could sell it and be tax free. So I was like, hey, if I find a property, why don't we partner on it? And he's like, great. He's like, I have no money. And, and I was like, I don't have any money, but he has the skills. Right. And so, I had no rich people. I don't come from a rich family. I had no network of rich people. It was all broke comedians. And I knew no one in New York City, except for this girl I was dating at the time. Like her dad was a lawyer in New York. And I was like, that's the richest guy I know. I had no idea if he was rich or not. He was a lawyer in New York City. And so, I found an off-market property, and it was a neighborhood that wasn't really, on the map. It was called Red Hook. It's kind of a cool little enclave now, but at the time it was just sort of becoming where all the artists, the hipsters would move to, because it was the only thing that was affordable. And I saw for sale, like handmade for sale sign in the window, and it was like it was an extended family living there. The storefront was converted into like 2 bedrooms with no windows. Upstairs, like there's holes in the bathtub, but they still used it like rust holes. And the floor was like a skateboarding ramp. Like it would be perfect for like a half pipe kind of situation. I honestly thought the building was going to collapse on them. I can't believe they were living there, and they were aware of it. So.
Mm-hmm.
I just started building up a conversation with them, talking to them, and really got them down on price. I think they started at 650 and finally got them down to 400. And
Wow.
We were.
Was there a method behind that? Was there a reason they needed out that allowed you to get it such a good deal?
No, I mean, my assumption was that this was not a safe place for them to live. They have to move out, but they don't have any money to move out. They have no money to fix anything either. And so I found the deal, got under contract, went to my girlfriend's dad and said, "Hey, you want to do a joint venture? 33, 33, 33. I've got the guy who's going to do all the renovations. I found the deal. I'm going to help him as much as I can. I have no handyman skills, but whatever needs to be done, I'll do the dirty work. I just need someone to put up the down payment and also the down payment for the renovation. I've already found a lender. They need 20% of it all." And so he was excited, because he was like, I always wanted to do real estate, but I went into law. If I didn't go to law, I'd go into real estate. So this was like a fun sort of side project for him to invest some money. And we were all in. We bought it for 400, put 200 into it, and this is 600,000. And we sold it to Barbara a year later for 1.1 million. And so that was like three of us splitting it. I think I walked away with like 166 or something. And this is a dude that was making 50,000 in his day job. And Barbara bought it. And I was like, I just did 3 years, that's 100, whatever those hours are, 3 years of 40 hours a day that I was doing in 3 years, times that I just made by honestly networking, negotiating. Someone else did the labor and someone else paid for it. And we're like, that worked out well. Let's do it again. So we did it 2 more times. And my contractor made so much money, he didn't need me anymore. He's like, I'm not splitting the profits. I don't need you anymore. I broke up with a girlfriend, which maybe, it kind of cut off my money source. But I had some I had some money at that time based on the 3 deals that we did, but I just stayed on that plan. Buy 1 property a year for every year. And if anyone does that in 5 years, you could leave your day job. Like, because good things happen, lucky things happen. I bought it for $200 here and $500 a month here and whatnot, the cash flow. But then, some of those doubled in price, and I could sell them and get a bigger property. And then I turned that into, whenever I sell a property, I want to buy something bigger. So if I bought a 1-bedroom condo, I was turning it into a single family house, and the single family house into a duplex. And if I sold a duplex, turn into a triplex. So I was always pushing myself to kind of go bigger and bigger on each 1031 exchange.
I love that. So I want to get into the 1031 exchanges in a second, but before we do that, I want you to give the audience some insight into how you structured those deals with your friends who gave you some money, or either your girlfriend's dad. Because a lot of people, they get caught up on being able to find private money, right? Which if you have a good deal, you can find private money. I fully believe that there's somebody who will lend to you. But once you find those people, how'd you set it up to make sure everything was, all your T's were crossed and all your I's were dotted?
Yeah. So I was 25. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So if you're listening to this, you don't know what the hell you're doing, it's okay. Like that's why an attorney is going to, walk you through and make sure you don't miss anything. And I think a lot of deals fall apart before in this negotiation of the joint venture when, I'm happy to take a small slice of a pie if I'm not putting any money in, rather than try to get too greedy up front. Like let's just get experience and let's just get a deal moving forward, and don't worry about the money, because I promise you, once the money comes, everyone's going to be much more reasonable in the next one. But this was my first time doing joint ventures, the contractor's first time, and then the lawyer's first time. And so we actually hired another lawyer to write it up, but it was 33, 33, 33. And we just spelled out what the roles and responsibilities were. So the contractor was responsible for sourcing the materials, installing the renovation, picking out the paint colors and the tile. Like we were like, this is what you're doing in the JV agreement. This is what you're responsible for. I was responsible for, managing the finances and the books, finding the tenants, selling, finding the appropriate real estate agent to sell it and to price it. All the sort of things that weren't renovation related. And it said, that's my roles and responsibilities. And then it said, the lawyers, the money guy, what they're responsible for, and which was just the down payment and the monthly mortgage payments until we get this done. Mm-hmm. And then it says, if anyone fails their job, this is what happens. Like if the contractor's not doing his work, after 30 days of handwritten notes saying you're behind on tasks, we have the ability to hire our own contractor, right? And then likewise, if I'm not doing the books, then they have the ability to give me a notice. And if they're not, then they can outsource it or do the books themselves. And if the money guy's not paying money, we have the ability to replace him. And so it was just sort of like, this is what you're doing. And if you F up, this is what's going to happen. And then, and then the third thing was like, if this falls apart, this is what's going to happen. We're going to sell the property in mid renovation and we'll split the money, whatever it is, kind of thing. And it was very sort of eye opening in that we didn't, once we sort of got started, we were so clear, crystal clear on who was going what and what. Like it was just a well-oiled machine, and obviously every partnership works well when there's a lot of money coming in too. But I'll tell you this: the next deal it changed because the contractor felt like he did more work and deserved more than 33%, and so he negotiated, I think, 40% on the 45% on the next one. I think I got 20% on the next one for finding the next deal. Like everyone was like, and the money guy's like, you can't do this without my money. Even though, I was putting in some money, we earned some money on that project. So we did 3 deals in a row and the numbers changed all 3 times. So there's not a template to stay, but we started that way. And then I sort of got squeezed out because people weren't evaluating what I was bringing to the table, and that's fine. I mean, now I find I've closed $30 million of real estate in the last 3 years without any of my money because I found other money partners. I'm still sourcing deals. I still got different contractors and other partners coming in, but it's like you said, you nailed it. Like if you've got a good deal, the money's going to come. It helps if people believe in you and trust you and you've got experience. So that's why I'm like, experience trumps everything. Just get in any deal you can, even if it's a 0.5%, just to hang your hat on something and learn and meet who the contractors are, understand how the workflow works, because that's going to really help you be successful on your next deal and the one after.
Spot on, man. Yeah, if you can find those deals, just to reiterate, then that just gives you so much leverage to go so many different routes. Whether you can do like Alan does and bring in partners, you can keep it for yourself, you can wholesale, you can fix and flip it. The key is learning how to mine those gems. And if you can mine those gems, you put yourself in a really good position. And then I like what you said about the partnerships. Number one, get an attorney to draw it up and make sure everybody is clear. I've got some partnerships, and that's the first thing we did was make sure it was clear. And then number two, don't get greedy. My best friend, when I started in real estate, we did a deal together, and he said, look, if we're going to do this, you got to understand that there is plenty of money for everyone. And if you keep that mindset and you don't get greedy throughout your investment journey, it'll pay you back, tenfold. And that couldn't be more true, because what happens is you start getting greedy. Well, then, nobody wants to work with you anymore. You lose relationships, things can happen, and so you lose money, but then you also, kind of lose a little bit of, I don't want to necessarily say your reputation, but you may lose some friends or partners that you could have kept leveraging those relationships to continue to make money. So you talked about a 1031 exchange. Explain to our listeners who may not know what that is, what the 1031 is, and how you have utilized it throughout your career.
Yeah, so it's a deferring of taxes. So when you sell stocks, you've got to pay taxes at any point. So real estate's the same way. There's short-term tax that's like roughly 25 to 30% if you hold something for less than a year. But if you hold something for over a year and it's not your primary residence, you're going to pay about 15% long-term tax gain on it. So a 1031 exchange says if you sell a piece of real estate, and as long as you buy something within 180 days after selling it that's worth the same or more, then you're deferring the taxes. You don't have to pay that tax hit right away. You're going to save it for a rainy day. Now, a lot of real estate investors think that everything they sell should be a 1031. I don't believe so, because you're going to have to pay that tax bill someday unless you die. And then that the benefit of a 1031 is whatever you die, then your heirs, benefactors get it at a stepped up basis, meaning that snowball of tax due gets wiped out. So It's not something you'd ever want to do to 1031 with partners because everyone's going to have different exit plans and you're never going to stay together. But it's something I've done individually where I'm like, I'm going to flip this eventually into properties that I'm going to have my kids inherit one day. That's when you want to do a 1031. So sort of some numbers. Let's say, you buy a property for $100,000 and you sell it for $200,000. You're going to have to pay about $15,000 in taxes on that $100,000 gain. But if you do a 1031, the IRS says keep that $15,000 as long as you go buy another property that's $200,000 or more. So then I would take that $100,000, which would be a 25% down payment on like a $400,000 property. And so then I've turned that $100,000. I bought it for 100, it appraised for 200,000, but I could flip that 1031 it into a $400,000 property but if I would to sell that $400,000 property, the IRS is going to say, wait a minute, you bought a property for 100,000 and now you got to pay taxes on if you're selling it for 400,000. So that's why you never really want to sell anything that's ever a 1031 because you're going to have that, snowball all the way down to the beginning of what you bought it for. But if I die and my kids get a property that's worth $400,000, the IRS says, okay, you got a property for 400 and it's worth 400. If you sell it, you don't have to pay any taxes.
That is great information. I hope you guys were taking notes. If not, rewind that part and write that down because that is great information because you may hear everybody talking about, hey, you should always do a 1031. That's just not true because you can end up getting yourself hammered, in the long run. So Alan, thank you. Thank you for that. I know that's super helpful information for the listeners. Now, moving forward, you've scaled up. I know you've sourced a lot of deals, done a lot of syndications, and you've bought properties for yourself. What has been? I always like to know what people's bread and butter is. What are you looking for in a property?
So right now, I mean, I started, like I said, in condos and then small, duplexes, triplexes. But now I'm at the point where I'm only looking for commercial buildings, typically 20 units or more. Ideally, value add, which is the commercial way of saying fixer uppers. I just sold my 52 home single family portfolio, and that compared to a 50 unit apartment building, I just actually closed on a 52 unit apartment building. It just happened to work out that way. It's just honestly so much easier. It sounds bigger. It sounds scarier, but I only have one roof to worry about instead of 52. I've only got one property tax bill instead of 52. I only have one landscaping bill instead of 52, one pest control bill instead of 52, right? Because it's all at one property. I only have to drive to one location. I couldn't have started there, right? I had to buy one house at a time, and I was buying some of these houses for $30,000, and over again, and over a few years to get up to 52 because I didn't have the means or the down payment or the connections or even the experience yet to even start at a 52 apartment building. But I worked my way up to it and built the confidence level. But now that I'm here, my life is just easier. It's more simplified. Also, what I like is the way a property that is 5 units or more is appraised and valued is strictly based on how much income it brings in, which is different than 4 units or more. So if I have got a duplex, and I do have duplexes, and then there's exact same duplex next door, and let's say I'm an awesome landlord and I charge for parking and storage in the basement, and I'm making $4,000 a month off that thing. But my neighbor has the exact same building and they're making $2,000 a month, and they're sort of checked out. And they sell that property for $200,000. My property is still for $200,000, even though it probably should be $400,000 because 4 units or fewer, it's appraised based on comps like similar properties. So because that property is built at the same time, same floor plan, and that's what it's sold for, that's what the value of my property is, no matter how much income it makes. However, that's the opposite applies in 5 units or more. It's strictly, you're buying a small business at that point. You need a commercial loan. And so they just evaluate it based on the spreadsheet. So I can save, if I can save $20 on a utility bill, that makes the property value go up. I'm sure it makes me, saves me $20 each month, but as a business on a spreadsheet, it really increases the property value. Same if I can, find ways to, get an extra $50 here or there, because so we'll put washers and dryers in the units, and then we can charge a little bit more than the neighboring property. And all these little things add up over time, and then you get this sort of, great cash flowing property. And then you do a cash out refi on that, and that's just doing a whole refinance where you get a check at the closing, and that's tax free. So then you get this big windfall in commercial every 2 to 3 years of based on the income that the property is making, which is just a different business than residential. And it took me 18 years to kind of get into this space. So it's a different language, and I'm still learning. I wouldn't say I'm an expert in commercial real estate, but it took being an expert in residential for me to make that leap, and that's sort of where I'm focusing now. But it doesn't mean that's where people listening should focus. It just happened to be my path.
No, I think it's interesting. I want to run with it because there's a lot of people who do want to do this, and I have a lot of buddies who do this type of real estate. One question I think would be helpful for myself and the audience is, how do you underwrite those deals? Meaning, more specifically, how do you know what you're going to be able to get for rents after you do those upgrades, and which upgrades do you guys look to do? Let's just say, I know that we could pick there's a bunch of different ways we could go: commercial, warehouse, retail, but let's just look at an apartment complex.
Yeah.
How do you decide all that?
So this is typically how fixer uppers are sold. It's quite interesting. And let's say there's a buyer out there that a seller that owns a 20 unit apartment building that they haven't fixed at all. Right. And they don't have the funds or the energy to really renovate it and turn this property into what it can be. So typically the sales tactic is, hey, we're going to renovate one unit. And that seller will renovate one unit, and it'll say, hey, 19 of these units are getting $1,000 a month, but we renovated this one, and this is what it costs us. It costs us $8,000 to renovate this. We put in a new washer and dryer, we put in new countertops or whatever. They give a list of what they did, how much it cost. And it's like, now we can charge $1,500 a month. And so what they've done is they've proven to all the buyers out there that, hey, if you go ahead and put $8,000 in the 19 other units, you can also raise the rent from $1,000 to $1,500. So that's sort of how it's done. Is someone's done that test. Usually there's because you're dealing with businesses at this point. It's a few mom and pops, but a real estate broker will have you do that anyway. But you sort of test and be like, hey, if you renovate it, it's $1,500. So we do that with our own units, not necessarily to sell, but we'll renovate one unit at a time, and then we'll test the market. And if we've renovated a unit and it cost us $8,000, but it only increased the rent from, $1,000 to $1,100. It wasn't as big of a bang as we thought, then we don't renovate the rest. It's like, it's not worth it yet. Let's wait a couple of years and try again. Or let's, try this other unit and maybe only put $2,000 in and see what sort of rent. So that's sort of what the beauty is, because they all have the same floor plan. And it's just like, let me try. You're not committing to doing all 20 at the same time. You're doing one at a time, two at a time, trying different renovations, different budgets, and also different rental prices. And then once you get it and you get like 5 applicants for one, and you're like, okay, if I do it for the rest, then let's finish this renovation.
That's interesting. And so you're looking to, because when we're looking to get it appraised, the appraisers are often looking at cap rates, correct? Or are they taking it all into an account?
Yeah, they're looking at net operating income. So that is all the income that's coming in minus all the expenses. And then you take that net operating income divided by the cap rate, and that's usually the purchase price.
Gotcha. That's awesome. So do y'all have like a certain amount that you're trying to increase that NOI, just like a ballpark? Yeah,
I mean, so we put it all in a spreadsheet, and we expect because it's way more complicated than running a residential where it's just addition and math. Mm-hmm. But usually we have a 10-year plan for commercial, and it'll say, this unit on, when the lease is up in 6 months, it's going to be empty, and then it's going to be vacant for 3 months while we do the renovation. And then we're going to try bumping the rent to this price. And so we have all these calculations based per unit over the next 10 years, how much we can increase rent for. And so overall, we kind of look at IRR, internal rate of return, which is also a combination of those rental increases with the increase of the purchase price or the value of the property that we will sell it for in 10 years. And we try to get an IRR around 15 to 20%. And so that feels like for our money, we're getting a 15 to 20% return, but also for our investors' money. And so the way these deals are sort of cut up is that the operators, my two partners and I, will own anywhere from 5% to 40% of the deal, depending on how difficult it is, how much work it's going to be. And then we sometimes put our own money in, sometimes we don't, depending on how much money we need. And then the investors will get that 15 to 20%. And then usually whatever's left over comes to us. And if the deal goes as planned, it's usually more than that. But so far it's been, working well, and we're only 3 or 4 years into this, so we haven't had the full 10-year horizon yet, but we're hitting, they're called performas, that Excel sheet where you're trying to predict the future. It's, as long as you kind of get into fixed rate debt, that right now that's what's making models break and scary, because sure, models we had 2 or 3 years ago, we were predicting 4% interest rates, and now we're at 6.5 and 7. So that's really going to change things. But luckily, our time we got into some fixed rate debt sort of before a bunch of those hikes went up. So we haven't been burned, but there's definitely feelings in this space, in the commercial apartment space, that a lot of people have interest only rental or interest rates are going to have to sell this spring, this summer, because it just keeps going up and up, and they're breaking even right now. And if it goes up again, they're going to be losing money. So people are expecting some deals to come back to the market soon.
I've been saying that for the last 6 months. People say, is the housing market going to get affected? I said, the residential market should probably be, okay across the board. I think second homes, they'll probably take a little bit of dip. The Airbnb space has got to slow down at some point. Long-term rentals in rural areas, probably not going to see much difference. They'll start sitting a little bit longer, maybe 5% drop, 10 in some areas. But it's the folks like you're talking about who had those pro formas based on refinancing and paying investors back or whatever the case may be at 4%, and now you're at 8, 9, and the banks want 50% equity too. And if you're in the commercial space right now and you're in a good position, then there's going to be a lot of opportunity. And I just want to say, like, for those of you listening, you can get into this space, and I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity here this summer. Just like Alan said, you can get into this space without doing what Alan does. So he's running point on a lot of these, and he's finding them, raising capital. But you could be, what they call them, an LP, a limited partner in these types of deals, where if you're an accredited investor, you can invest in these types of deals. And I'm not sure if Alan and them open their particular fund to the public, but there's lots of funds that are open to the public if you meet the criteria of being an accredited investor. I am an accredited investor, and I invest in funds like these. I haven't invested in a syndication of one particular property, but I invest in like a fund that a private group of friends that I know does. And you can make a lot of money as long as you partner with somebody who's running the numbers the right way.
Yeah, I mean, I heard someone phrase it this way, and it just resonates with people. In these sort of deals, you're betting on the horse and you're betting on the jockey. So the horse is the deal itself, and then the jockey are the people running the deal. And so it's a great way to sort of be passive investing. And so really make sure you trust the operators, and also make sure you like the deal that they're working on, and put money into it. But this is, again, it took me 23 years of real estate investing to enter this stage. So this is high level advanced stuff. And, there's no wrong answer to real estate investing. You can make money in $99,000 condos like I did, or buying $30,000 houses. The catch now, where people are going to get in hot water, and the catch in the housing crash has always been variable interest rates. So always buy a property with fixed rate mortgages, and it's almost risk free, because your expenses are fixed for 30 years. And the story I tell about this is like, as people in real estate investing always think the goal is to pay off your rental property. And it's not. You actually want a mortgage, and the way to approach that is the story I say is, imagine you pull into a gas station and you find a dollar bill on the ground. You have two options. You can mail that dollar bill into your mortgage principal, right, and pay off $1, or you can go in and buy a bag of candy. I mean, maybe you get one Snickers bar, right? So you can either spend it on something today or pay off a mortgage. Now, let's say you left that dollar bill on the ground. 15 years later, you come back to that same gas station and it's still sitting there, and then you pick it up. Well, you now have those same two options. You can either mail that in to your bank and pay off a mortgage of $1, or you can go in the gas station and try to buy some candy, and a Snickers bar is now $3. And so you're like, why this dollar's worth 33 cents, but it still pays off a full dollar on my mortgage. So everything else around you is going to get more and more expensive except your mortgage if you have a 30-year fix. So you never pay that off. That's like the best benefit ever, because everything around you is always going to get more and more expensive due to inflation. So I always say that's the beauty of real estate is the 30-year mortgage. Don't get the 15-year mortgage. Don't put extra money towards it because of that principle right there. And you're going to get to the point in 30 years from now when, like, that, with, let's say your mortgage payment's $2,000 a month, it's like laughing at your parents or your grandparents' mortgage payment, and it's like $78 a month, right? Like it's, whatever it is, because they started it 28 years ago. And so that same thing is going to apply to you. If 2,000 feels very expensive right now, I promise you in 28 years, everyone's going to be jealous that you have a $2,000 mortgage payment, but your money went further by spending it over that 20 years on everything else, because that's the stuff that's getting expensive. So get it now while it's cheap.
Love it. Hence why they always say real estate is a great hedge against inflation, because you are stuck in that interest, and it is a cheat code. All right, we're going to wrap this thing up. I want you to give everybody a breakdown before we let you go of the house fire method. You've had obviously a lot of experience in real estate, and I think this is great. So I want you to tell the audience about it.
Yeah, so there's a movement called the FIRE movement that stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. I used to be that person, I should say. My first book, $1 Million by 30, I lived way below my means. I lean fired, which basically means I ate ramen noodles every day. But the math behind the FIRE movement is that if you save up 25 times your annual expenses in a stock portfolio, you can retire. You can be financially independent. You can retire early as long as you withdraw 4%. So an example of that is, imagine you had a $150 internet bill, phone and internet bill combined. 1 year of that is $1,800. Multiply that by 25. As long as you save up $45,000 and put that in stocks, well, then you can just withdraw 4% of that every single year. And historically, you'll always have enough money to pay that internet bill. That seemed crazy to me because I went through all my expenses and I was like, $45,000 just for one phone bill. Like, I've got to be a millionaire to retire. Like, duh, like this is not math I'm excited about. And so I was like, let me just do this with real estate. And I realized that you can half it. So instead of saving up for $45,000, you can save up for $22,500. You can go buy a $100,000 single family house out of state with a property manager that will cash flow $150. So all of a sudden, that house that took half as much money, $22,500, cash flows $150. That pays for my phone and internet bill. And so once I figured that out, that I could retire in half the time as the FIRE movement, I went down and through every single bill. And I was like, I want to burn my bills through houses. So that's the house fire method. So then I went to the next bill and I was like, okay, my utilities, my gas, my electric bill, I can never go to Costco and buy these in bulk. I'll never pay these off. They are going to follow me in life. That's another $150, right? Let me save up another $22,000. And I went to go get another house that would pay that bill. And I just went through every single bill in my house. And a lot of people get stuck and they're going to say, hey, I need to go buy a new car. And they'll go get a car note that's, they may save up, let's say you want to buy a Tesla for $50,000, right? I could take my $50,000 and give it to the richest man in the world and say, here you go, Elon, give me my Tesla. Or I can say, let me get that $50,000. Let me go buy a house that cash flows $400 a month that'll pay for my Tesla car note. And then that house over 7 years is going to pay off my car note. And then guess what? Once that car, my Tesla's paid off, now I have that extra $400 that I've got to earmark to another bill. And so I started doing this, through student loan debt, every single bill in my life. And what's great about this method is that this is the only retirement method where I get to live larger and larger each year in retirement, because these houses, these assets are paying off all my bills, pay them off in full. Rent is going up each month. The mortgage is getting paid down each month. So the longer I do the house fire method, the more money I have to spend in retirement. And every other retirement plan out there, you live on a constrained budget except for the house fire plan.
Wow. That is amazing, guys and gals. Listen to this. Take notes, dude. That is fabulous. And I always knew, that's why I got into real estate, is the returns and the speed to retirement was greater, but I can't say that I've ever broken it down like that. And so to hear you like just lay it out in half the amount of time. If you were on the fence about real estate investing, you are no more after hearing Alan lay that out perfectly. Alan, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Lastly, tell everybody where they can find you, where they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, sure. I'm Real Estate Maxi. I call myself a real estate maximalist. So on social media, I'm at Real Estate Maxi. It's also my website, realestatemexi.com. And you can get my House Fire book on Amazon. But thanks for having me, JD. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Guys and gals, if you're listening to this, please share it with a friend or three. There's a lot of great nuggets throughout this entire episode that I know tons of people could benefit from. And then go on Instagram, take a snippet of you listening to this podcast, post it on your story, and tag me at Finance Cowboy and tag Alan at Real Estate Maxi on Instagram. We both would personally love to tell you thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to us. And I appreciate all of our listeners out there. Alan, again, thank you so much. And until next time, we'll talk soon.
This has been a blast. Can't wait to do it again.